So now we're going to continue in the Sharh of Qatrun Nada by Ibn Hisham. He did the Metin and he did the Sharh. Now he's going to give us a new piece of Metin. Then he's going to explain. And so he says, Asul, original text. Thumma dhul adah. Then there is that which has an article. Then there is a word modified by an article. Adah means a tool. Then there's a word modified by a tool. Wahiya al. That tool is al, the particle al, the. عند الخليل. عند الخليل وسيبويه. According, it's al, that tool is al according to al-Khalil and Sibawayh. لا اللام وحدها خلافا للأخفش. It's not only the lamb as opposed to al-Akhfash who said the tool is just the lamb only. وتكون للعهد. Now this al would be for something known, familiar, something already familiar. naHw, such as the saying of Allah, fi zujaja, az-zujaja, in glass, the glass, etc. So in glass, fi zujaja, in glass or crystal. So now something's been introduced to us, which is the zujaja, the glass. So now it's familiar to us. So when it's mentioned the next time with L on it, that L means the glass that's familiar to you, the one you just became acquainted with. Az-zujaja. وَجَاءَ الْقَاضِي. And also like جَاءَ الْقَاضِي, the judge came. So what's intended here is that this is a judge in mind. Basically, you're saying something in mind. Al-ahd here means in mind. Something in mind. You know how you say, do you have anything in mind? So al would be for something in mind, like these examples here. Oh, little jins. Or it would be for a type or kind. كَأَهْلَكَ النَّاسَ الدِّينَارُ وَالدِّرْهَمُ. Like the golden coin and the silver coin ruined the people. It's not a golden coin or silver coin in particular. So what's meant is the type. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. And also this ayah, this is for the type. It means, and we made from the water every living thing. The water here means from that type of thing. There's something I've been looking for in translation. Maybe now I just got closer to it, but I'm just going to keep moving now. So it's like it's saying we made from water, meaning that type of thing. It's like here, it's not even translated here. We made from water every living thing. أو لاستغراق أفراده. Or it would be for incorporating all individuals. Incorporation of all individuals. naHw, such as وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. The human was created weak. or weakly, yani, as a weak thing. The human was created weak. So that is to incorporate all individuals, this al. Al sifatihi, or it's for incorporating the qualities. Nahu Zaydun rajul, like saying Zayd is the man. Zayd is the man. Now it's in reference to some attributes he has, which would be presumed as the attributes of the men. So he's the man. Ash-sharh, the explanation. النوع الخامس من أنواع المعارف. The fifth type of definite words is ذو الأداة. If you see my screen here, you see this wow is missing. That's an obvious typo. ذو الأداة. If you saw something like that, then you shouldn't be confused at all. naHw, such as al-faras, the horse, wal-ghulam, and the lad. والمشهور بين النحويين أن المعرف ال عند الخليل واللام وحدها عند سيبويه. And what is famous amongst the grammarians is that the tool itself for definiteness, the mu'arrif, that which makes the word definite is al completely. Al, according to Al-Khalil, and lam in particular, according to Sibawayh. ونقل ابن عصفور الأول عن ابن كيسان. Ibn Usfur logged the first thing from Ibn Kaysan. والثانية عن بقية النحويين, and he logged the second saying about the rest of the grammarians. ونقله بعضهم عن الأخفش, and some of them said, yani, they reported that about al-Akhfash. وزعم ابن مالك أنه لا خلاف بين سيبويه والخليل. And Ibn Malik, he said an interesting saying, that there is no difference between Sibawayh and Al-Khalil في أن المعرف al, about the tool being al completely. وقال إنما الخلاف بينهما في الهمزة. He said merely the difference between them is about the reality of that hamza there. أزائدة هي أم أصلية? Is it an additive or is it originally part of the tool? واستدل على ذلك بمواضع أوردها من كلام سيبويه. And then he proved that by some spots that he produced from Sibawayh. So, what did Ibn Hisham himself say in the Metin? He said, وهي ال عند الخليل عند الخليل وسيبويه وهي ال عند الخليل وسيبويه. It's L according to Al-Khalil and Sibawayh. So it looks like Ibn Hisham agrees with Ibn Malik. And he's saying here, but this is not the famous saying. So we learned the difference between the famous saying al-mashhur and something else like as-sahih, the correct saying. Those don't mean the same thing. Famous means most widespread. Doesn't mean it's the strongest. Or al-aqwa, the strongest saying. Those don't mean the same thing. He says, وَتَلْخِيصُ الْكَلَامِ, the synopsis of the talk. أَنَّ فِي الْمَسْأَلَةِ ثَلَاثَةَ مَذَاهِبٍ, is that the case has three madhabs. أَحَدُهَا أَنَّ الْمُعَرِّفَ أَلْ وَالْأَلِفُ أَصْلٌ. One of those three is that the tool is al completely, and the hamza therein is originally part of the tool. وَالثَّانِي أَنَّ الْمُعَرِّفَ أَلْ, the second saying is that the tool is also al completely. وَالْأَلِفُ زَائِدَةٌ, but the alif in this case is extra. Like you might say, how would the alif be extra, but the word is completely like that? Because Hamzatul Wasl is never an original letter. Hamzatul Wasl is never an original letter. Hamzatul Wasl is added to a word. Here's a word you know, like istighfar. Istighfar. Seeking repentance. So that first letter is Hamzatul Wasl. That's the word though. The word is istighfar with that Hamza there. That's the whole word. But that Hamza is extra. It's not original because it has a function that's why it's there. One thing you'll always notice about Hamzatul Wasl is the letter after it always has what? A sukun. The letter after Hamzatul Wasl always has a sukun. So Hamzatul Wasl also, you should notice that Hamzatul Wasl is always what? The first letter. Anytime a word has Hamzatul Wasl, that Hamza is the first letter. And the letter after it is always has a sukun. So what is that? That's because in Arabic, you can't start with a sukun. Then you have to bring something so you can start with it. So then they bring something called Hamzatul Wasl. So it's a Hamza when you start with it. So you'd say E or A or U, Hamza. But whenever there's something in front of it, you skip right through it. Because it was only there so you can start with it. So that's what he's saying here. الثاني أن المعرف al. The second saying is that the tool is al completely. وَالْأَلِفُ زَائِدَةٌ. However, the alif there is extra because it's a Hamzatul Wasl. الثالث أن المعرف اللام أن المعرف اللام وحدها. The third school is that the tool is only the lam, and the hamza is just there so you can start. It's just the lam. So this tool has three names. One is al-alif wal-lam. That's what he said in Al-Ajurumiyya, isn't it? When he said, فَأَمَّا الْإِسْمُ فَيُعْرَفُ بِالْخَفْضِ وَالتَّنْوِينِ وَدُخُولِ الْأَلِفِ وَاللَّامِ. He said, by the alif and the lam, you can know the nominal, the noun. So that's one name for this particle, al-alif wal-lam. Another name for it is al. And that's what Ibn Hisham's been calling it. What did he say here? Wahiya al. That's how he named it. Wahiya al. Did he call it al-alif wal-lam somewhere else in the book? I remember he might have. Somewhere in the sharh earlier. We'll have to review. And a third name for this particle is al-lam. That's what some scholars mean when they say al-lam. Like Sheikh Bahraq, rahimahullah, who explained mulha. He says, والاحتجاج لهذه المذاهب يستدعي تطويلا لا يليق بهذا الإملاء. And arguing for these schools, giving the proofs and arguments for these schools requires going into length, going into details that are not befitting of this dictation or this presentation. وتنقسم المعرفة إلى ثلاثة أقسام. He says al, the definite particle, divides into three categories. So here, firstly, al. So we don't see this particle standing alone. It's always going to be attached to the ism. When we want to talk about it like we're doing now, then we detach it and then talk about it. Right? Well, that's just like any other attached particles and pronouns. Like the bat, you say bismi, there's a bat there. You don't just see that bat floating somewhere. It's always going to be prefixed. But when you need to talk about it, you're going to disconnect it, and then you're going to call it the bat. So we're talking about al here. And even if you don't say the lam when it connects to some shamsi letters, like you say at-tawil, you say as-siyam, you know what I'm talking about here. You say Ar-Rahman, you're not pronouncing the lam. But when we talk about this particle on its own, we're going to pronounce the lam all the time. We're going to call it al. Unless we're talking about m, which is going to come. So for now, we're talking about al. M that means the, not m that means or. Now, this al, it's built with a sukoon. In terms of it being by itself, it's built with a sukoon, so it's al. But you can't have two sukoons in a row, so whenever you're talking about this al, and then the next word has sukoon too, then you have to bring a kasra instead of that sukoon. So you're going to say Ali al-mu'arrifa. وتنقسم المعرفة إلى ثلاثة أقسام. That's to break two sukoons. The original vowel for breaking two sukoons is a kasra. Also, pay attention here. There's a kasra here underneath of this shadda on the ra. So originally kasra goes under the letter, not over the letter. Even if there's a shadda over the letter, the kasra is supposed to stay under the letter. It doesn't come over the letter under the shadda, even though you'll see it most of the time like that printed. That's, according to our sheikh, that's a mistake. Very common, widespread mistake. Rarely in printed material will you find other than this. So be mindful and teach it to other people too. And when you write on your own, write the right way. Put the kasra under. Leave the shadda over the letter and keep the shadda under, and keep the kasra under the letter. وتنقسم المعرفة إلى ثلاثة أقسام. So al-mu'arrifa with a kasra there, when we say mu'arrifa with a kasra on the ra, that means the doer, the one that does whatever those root letters mean. What do those root letters mean there? Those root letters are referring to the definiteness. So mu'arrifa is the one that does the definiteness. It means the one that puts the definiteness in something else, in the following noun. وتنقسم المعرفة إلى ثلاثة أقسام. The definiter, is divided into three categories. I don't think that's a real word, but that's just essentially what it's saying though. وذلك أنها إما لتعريف العهد. And that's either because it is for specifying something in mind, أو لتعريف الجنس, or it is for specifying a type or kind, أو للاستغراق, or it is for incorporation, incorporating the units into a whole or into one thing. فأما التي لتعريف العهد. Now concerning the one that is to specify something in mind, فتنقسم قسمين. That one is divided into two categories. لأن العهد إما ذكري وإما ذهني. Because that which is in mind is either something that has been mentioned, so that's how it became in mind, or it's something that's already in mind. Now, as far as I can tell, also, all of these details, all of this categorization, it works in English. But what's interesting that you won't find, I didn't, so if you do find, tell me. I didn't find any English grammarians do such a categorization and breakdown, and I don't suspect that they have. Simple fact was that those Muslim scholars were smarter, and they had more knowledge. They were guided. فَالْأَوَّلُ كَقَوْلِكَ. So the first one is like you saying, اشتريت فرسا. I purchased a horse. فرسا, a horse. So it's indefinite. ثم بعت الفرس. But since you mentioned it, now it's in mind. So then, now that it's in mind, you say, ثم بعت الفرس. Then I sold the horse. So the means that one that's in mind. أي بعت الفرس المذكور, meaning the one that was just mentioned. I sold that mentioned horse. ولو قلت, and had you said, ثم بعت فرسا, then I sold a horse. لكان غير الفرس الأول. It would have been other than the first horse. So, had you said, اشتريت فرسا, I purchased a horse. Now, there's a horse in mind. But if you after that said, then I sold a horse, it's not the same horse you just mentioned here. That's not the horse in mind. So if you want to specify the one that's in mind, you bring the particle. Al اشتريت فرسا, I purchased a horse. ثم بعت الفرس, then I sold the horse that was just mentioned, the one that's in mind. So this case here, which ayah this clarifies for you? Which ayah this clarifies for you? Clarifies the ayah. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ, for indeed with the difficulty is yusra, and ease. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ, indeed with the difficulty, yusra is an ease. So that second one, that second ease, like you learned before, it's not the first one. Had it been with L, then it would have been the first one. Indeed, with the difficulty, there is an ease. With the difficulty, there is an ease. So then that's how it was proven that with the difficulty comes two eases, because the second one is not the first one. But yani the ease, the second ease is not the first ease, but the difficulty is the same one because of al. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, for indeed with the difficulty is an ease. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, indeed with the difficulty is an ease. For every difficulty, there's two eases, is the meaning. And ma'a, with the difficulty is the ease, means after. But because it's so quick, it comes so quick, Allah told us with ma'a. So keep that in mind. And me too, inshallah. قال Allah Ta'ala, said Allah, exalted is He, مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح. The example of His light is like مشكاة فيها مصباح. I don't have the words right now. I don't want to turn to pull them out either. So the example of His light is like a mishkah that has in it a lantern. A lantern. Misbah, misbahun. Al-misbahu fi zujaja. The lantern. So it's the one in mind. In glass. Fi zujaja, in glass. Az-zujajatu ka'annaha kawkabun durri. The glass in mind, as if it is kawkabun durri. Wathani kaqawlik, and the second is like for you to say, Ja al-qadi, the judge came. إذا كان بينك وبين مخاطبك عهد في قاض خاص. This is what you would say if there were between you and to whomever you speak a particular judge in mind, already in mind. So then you say the judge came. So that's like when we say a sheikh without saying who's the sheikh. It means Sheikh Abdullah. So many times you don't have to say which sheikh you mean, because we have one in mind already. And sometimes it's not clear, so you're saying, you mean Sheikh Abdullah or someone else? وَأَمَّا الَّتِي لِتَعْرِيفِ الْجِنْسِ. And as for the one that's for specifying a type, فَكَقَوْلِكَ. Then that's like for you to say, الرَّجُلُ أَفْضَلُ مِنَ الْمَرْأَةِ. That's like for you to say, الرَّجُلُ أَفْضَلُ مِنَ الْمَرْأَةِ. The man is better than the woman. إِذْ لَمْ تُرِدْ بِهِ رَجُلًا بِعَيْنِهِ وَلَا امْرَأَةً بِعَيْنِهَا. That's like, that's what you'd say if what you meant, if you didn't mean, if when you said that, you did not mean any man in particular, nor any woman in particular. If you said that without meaning any man in particular or any woman in particular, because you can say those same words, but you mean, if there was a man and a woman in particular, and then you said the man is better than the woman, then that's not what we're talking about here. But if you didn't mean any man in particular, nor any woman in particular, and so you said the man is better than the woman, then this is what we're talking about here. So that's just an example, and I could keep on moving, but then someone might say, but wait a minute, hold on a second. Is that true? Is that generality true? Or that's only an example? The generality is true. Now, someone's going to be so mad, offended, but no need to be. It's a generality. So that means that if you're a man, there could be plenty of women who are way better than you. So someone might say, how could such a generality be true? Someone might say, how could this offensive generality be true? It's offensive to me. And, don't be sensitive here. Rather, it's the case. The Prophet ﷺ said that many men have become perfect. That means they reach the highest levels of wilayah. Many men. He said, but as for the women, only 5 of them have. If you know that hadith. Only 5 women reached that high level that many men reached. Who are those? Mary, Khadija, Fatima, Aisha, and Asiya. I didn't mention them in order. I didn't mention them in any particular order. So, shouldn't be like something that's hurtful for someone. It's like, for example, it's like if you were to say, slim figure is more attractive than thick figure. So that means every slim one is more attractive than every thick one. Doesn't mean it, but it's a true generality, though, for human taste, in general human taste. This is not the spot really to digress so much, but maybe I won't find another opportunity. So what did they say too? The kuffar, they will admit that a man is stronger than a woman. This is undeniable because it's physically observed. Stronger. And some of them, even many of the women too, they would admit that a man is smarter than a woman. General statement there. There's plenty of women smarter than many men. Subhanallah. One person told me Do you know what's a proof that a man is smarter than a woman? I feel like I'm getting into so much trouble talking like this here, but one brother told me, "Do you know what's proof that man is smarter than a woman?" That's a general statement there. He told me it's chess. He said, "How come they have female chess league and male chess league?" He said, "Because there's a difference. They really recognize the difference in the mental capacity, so that the top male chess master, he will defeat the top female chess master." MashaAllah. He told me also, usually the top chefs are men too. You might imagine this is a woman. He said usually it's men. So subhanAllah, I'm just mentioning some interesting things only. I don't have anything against women or anybody else, mashallah. So anyway, he says here, so that's like if you were to say, الرجل أفضل من المرأة. The man is better than the woman, without meaning any man in particular or any woman in particular. وإنما أردت أن هذا الجنس من حيث هو أفضل من هذا الجنس من حيث هو. Rather, what you meant is that this particular type is better than this particular type. ولا يصح أن يراد بهذا أن كل واحد من الرجال أفضل من كل واحدة من النساء. And it's not correct to mean by this that every individual amongst the men is better than every individual amongst the women. لأن الواقع بخلافه is another typo right there. لأن الواقع بخلافه, because reality shows differently. But let me here remind you, what is the standard in religion that makes anyone better than anyone? It's piety. Piety has a condition, which is knowledge. So if a person has sufficient knowledge and therefore became pious, then this person is superior to anyone with less piety, regardless of the gender. So the meaning here then is, and likewise, if someone has more knowledge along with the piety, then he'd be better than to Allah someone who has less knowledge with piety. So then the meaning then is that it's more difficult for women to achieve piety and how they are created. How Allah created the women made it more difficult for them to achieve piety, but it's possible. And also, mostly men will have more knowledge, but there will always be too, like it's possible there's going to be female scholars. There have been, and there are, and there will be, inshallah. And very good teachers. Some of my best teachers were women. My favorite and best teachers, most beneficial. But also don't forget that there's statuses that need to be observed too. For example, the status of the parents. So you're not going to say, well, I'm more pious than my parents, I have more knowledge than my parents, I'm better than my parents, and I'm going to treat them too. I'm going to show them who's better. So no, not like that. Those are your parents, so that means they have status over you by virtue of being parents, not by virtue of piety. And likewise, your elders. Even if you had more knowledge and more piety, those are your elders, and you have to have respect. And like that, like also for the husband, then the woman would have proper respect for her husband. وَكَذَلِكَ قَوْلِكَ, and likewise, if you were to say, أَهْلَكَ النَّاسَ الدِّينَارُ وَالدِّرْهَمُ. If I translate that verbatim, it's the golden coin and the silver coin ruined the people. The golden coin and the silver coin ruined the people. وَقَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى, and also when Allah says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. And we made from the water everything living. وَأَلْ هَذِهِ هِيَ الَّتِي يُعَبَّرُ عَنْهَا بِالْجِنْسِيَّةِ. And so this L is the one called the typical L. Al-Jinsiyah, the typical one. The one for a type. وَيُعَبَّرُ عَنْهَا أَيْضًا بِالَّتِي لِبَيَانِ الْمَاهِيَّةِ. And it's also called the L that's for clarifying the kind. وَبِالَّتِي لِبَيَانِ الْحَقِيقَةِ. And it's also called the L that's for clarifying the reality. وَأَمَّا الَّتِي لِلْإِسْتِغْرَاقِ فَعَلَى قِسْمَيْنِ. And concerning the one that's for incorporation, incorporating units into a whole, it has two divisions. لأن الاستغراق إما أن يكون باعتبار حقيقة الأفراد أو باعتبار صفات الأفراد. That's because the incorporation is either going to be by considering the individual units themselves in reality, or by considering the attributes of the individual units, and it's not intended by those units in particular. فَالْأَوَّلُ naHw. So the first one is like when you want to incorporate all the individuals really, it's like when Allah says, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. The human was created weak. أي كل واحد من جنس الإنسان ضعيف. The meaning here is that every individual in the humankind is weak. والثاني نحو قولك. And the second is like for you to say, when we talk about the attributes and not the units in reality, أنت الرجل, you are the man. أي الجامع لصفات الرجال المحمودة. This means you are the one who collects all the praiseworthy attributes of the men. You are the embodiment of all praiseworthy attributes of men. وضابط الأولى أن يصح حلول كل محلها على جهة الحقيقة. And the rule for the first one, when you want to incorporate every individual, the rule by which you can know you did it properly is if you can put the word kul in the place of al, yani every, in the place of the. If you can put every in the place of the, then the meaning of the is this one, the inclusive one, the incorporating one. فَإِنَّهُ لَوْ قِيلَ. For indeed, had it been said, وَخُلِقَ كُلُّ إِنسَانٍ ضَعِيفًا. Every human was created weak. لَصَحَّ ذَلِكَ عَلَى جِهَةِ الْحَقِيقَةِ. Then that would be valid in reality. It would apply truly to all those individuals. وَضَابِطُ الثَّانِيَةِ. And the rule for the second one, when you talk about the attributes, أن يصح حلول كل محلها على جهة المجاز, is that also you can put kul in the place of al. So you could put every in the place of the, but in a figurative way, not a literal way. فإنه لو قيل أنت كل الرجل لصح ذلك على جهة المبالغة. For indeed, had it been said, you are every man, then that is valid from the perspective of exaggeration. Yani, that's a real exaggeration. That's understood, the point behind it, yani. كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام كل الصيد في جوف الفرا. He said, just like that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Kullu saydi fi jawfi al-fara." Okay, I still need to think about how to translate that, so I'm not sure. وقول الشاعر, and also what the poet said, ليس على الله بمستنكر أن يجمع العالم في واحد. It's not far-fetched. It's not strange. It's not impossible to the mind that Allah would put all of the world into one person. Now, last thing here. He says, أصل, original text. وإبدال اللام ميما لغة حميرية. And to make the lam a meme, to replace the lam with a meme, is a Himyari dialect. Himyar, that's from Yemen. So it's a Yemeni dialect. الشرح, the explanation. لغة حمير إبدال لام الميم. The dialect of Himyar is to replace the lam of al with a meme. وقد تكلم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بلغتهم. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he spoke their dialect. إذ قال, when he said, ليس من بر صيام في سفر. ليس من بر صيام في سفر. It means, ليس من البر الصيام في السفر. It's not good. Not amongst the good things is fasting during a journey. Yani, it means when it's not easy. It is good to do it when it's easy. So he spoke to them in their dialect. وَعَلَيْهِ قَوْلُ الشَّاعِرِ. And this is the way to take what the poet said. ذاك خليلي وذو يواصلني يرمي ورائي بمسهم ومسلمة. يعني بمسهم instead of بالسهم, ومسلمة instead of السلمة. والله أعلم. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This is why some scholars said it's better to say Al-Mu'arraf bil-Adah. It's better for the chapter heading to be what's made definite by a tool. They say, because if you say Al-Mu'arraf bi-Al, what's made definite by Al, then you right there excluded M. So they said better to say Al-Mu'arraf bi-Adah, what's made definite by a tool, and then that's going to include Al and M. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tayyib, do you have any question I can answer for you? He says, so when Allah sends down the calamity or hardship, he sends down two eases with it, after it. With it means so fast after it. So fast like it came with it. Tayyib, we'll stop here.